Walk into a grocery store today, and nothing looks dramatically wrong. The shelves aren't empty. The lights are on. The music is playing. And that's exactly the problem. Because here's what's actually happening behind that normal-looking storefront. The National Retail Federation is projecting that overall imports will fall by roughly 20% in the second half of 2025. That's not a fringe prediction. That's a mainstream trade organization looking at real order data and telling you that a significant chunk of what normally flows into this country is simply not coming. But here's the thing about how grocery stores work. They don't go empty overnight. What happens is quieter and, honestly, more disorienting. A brand you've bought for 15 years quietly disappears. A section that used to have 12 options now has 6, but they've spread the remaining cans out so the shelf still looks full. You reach for something one Tuesday in October and it's just not there anymore. And you think, they must be restocking. They're not restocking. That product is gone. That's what we're actually tracking today. Not apocalypse. Not empty shelves. 15 specific items that are either disappearing, becoming unaffordable, or quietly being reduced in ways most households are completely unprepared for, and I am going to walk you through every single one of them, with the actual data behind each one, not generalizations, not fear, actual supply chain, numbers and commodity data. Now I need you to stay with me through this entire list, because number 8 is the one that genuinely stopped me cold when I went looking for the numbers. I did not expect what I found. In the solution section at the end of this video, we're going to get very specific and very practical, more than I've been in a while. If this is your first time here, my name is John. This is John Prepares, and this channel is all about pantry preparedness. Practical, data-backed, no nonsense. Hit subscribe if you want to stay ahead of this, because we're going to have a lot more to cover in the coming months. Let's get into it. Starting with item number 1, which is the most dramatic supply chain story in American food right now. Item 1. Beef. The protein that broke the system. Let's start with beef, because it is the clearest example of a structural problem, not a temporary blip, not a seasonal fluctuation, a genuine multi-year crisis that is going to hit harder this fall and winter. The U.S. cattle herd currently stands at approximately 86.2 million head. Now that sounds like a massive number. It is not. That is the smallest the American cattle herd has been since 1951. The Truman administration. 75 years ago. And it's not because Americans stopped eating beef. Demand is as strong as it's ever been. The problem is supply. Years of severe drought across the southern plains forced ranchers into an impossible position. High interest rates made it financially non-viable to hold on to breeding stock. So ranchers made the heartbreaking decision to sell off breeding cattle. Generations of genetics, family bloodlines developed over decades, sold off in a single season because financially there was no other option. And here is the biological reality that most people completely miss when they hear this story. Even if every single rancher in America decided to rebuild their herds starting today, right now, today, the new supply from those animals would not meaningfully reach grocery store shelves until 2028 at the earliest. That is not an opinion. That is bovine reproductive biology. Cattle gestation is 9 months. It takes 2 years for an animal to reach market weight. You cannot speed that up. You cannot tariff your way out of it. You cannot wish it away by the end of the year. There is a second layer to this that makes the situation dramatically worse. The U.S.-Mexico border is currently closed to imported cattle due to a New World screwworm outbreak, a livestock disease situation that is being managed carefully, and for good reason. But under normal circumstances, approximately 1.2 to 1.5 million head of cattle cross from Mexico into U.S. feedlots every single year. That supply is gone right now. We don't have a timeline for when it returns because disease situations don't come with timelines. Ground beef hit over $6.7 a pound nationally as of this spring, with many of you reporting prices well above that. The USDA is projecting a further 6% increase through 2026, and the agency's own forecasts show elevated prices through at least 2027. I think that's optimistic. When you understand the biology of the cattle cycle, 2028 feels more realistic. What do? We'll get to the full action plan at the end. But the short answer is, buy ground beef when you find it on sale, Pressure can it in 10-pound batches, and give yourself 2 to 3 years of shelf-stable ground beef at the price you paid today. That is the single most impactful thing you can do for your protein budget right now. Stay with me, because beef is the obvious one. The next 14 items are the ones most people aren't watching. Item 2. Olive oil. The bottle that's already half gone. The United States produces approximately 2% of the olive oil it consumes. 2%. That means 98% of every bottle on that grocery store shelf came from somewhere else, primarily Spain, Italy, and Greece, all of which are now facing a 20% tariff on European imports into the United States. Some mid-price olive oil brands have already quietly disappeared from shelves in many markets. You may have noticed the price on your preferred bottle jumping significantly. Premium brands are already up roughly 30% from where they were 18 months ago. And here's the thing that makes this a long-term problem rather than a short-term one. Olive trees take 5 to 7 years. There is no domestic alternative that can fill this gap. We grow 2%. We are structurally dependent on European supply, and European supply just got 20% more expensive to import. If you use olive oil regularly, for cooking, for dressings, for anything, buy 2 to 4 bottles of your preferred brand right now. Store them in a cool, dark location because light degrades quality faster than time does. The best functional substitute if olive oil becomes genuinely unaffordable is avocado oil, comparable smoke point, similar flavor profile, and currently sourced from a somewhat different supply chain. This is one where the price trajectory is completely predictable and completely one-directional. Item 3. Canned tuna and seafood. The budget protein under siege. Canned tuna is one of those pantry staples that most people think of as infinitely available, cheap, reliable, always there. And for a long time, that was true. But a surprising portion of U.S. canned tuna originates from Thailand and the Philippines, not just as fishing nations, but critically as processing nations. The canning infrastructure, the facilities where the fish actually gets packed into those tins, is concentrated in Southeast Asia. And those nations are now facing significant tariff pressure. What you're already seeing on the shelf is reduced variety. Fewer brands, fewer flavors, fewer pack sizes. The category still exists, but it's thinning. And canned tuna, for anyone building a serious pantry, is one of the highest return on investment purchases you can make right now. A quality canned tuna has a shelf life of 3 to 5 years. That is a protein source you can buy today at today's prices and eat in 2028 when the beef situation is still being resolved. Buy cases, not individual cans. The per unit cost drops significantly. Store in a cool, dark pantry. Rotate using oldest first. This is one of the items where the window to stock up at reasonable prices is genuinely closing. But here's where this story gets actually strange, and I want you to pay attention to this next one, because it's connecting a dot that almost nobody is connecting. Item 4. The packaging crisis nobody is talking about. This one isn't about the food inside the container. It's about the container itself. Tariffs on steel, aluminum, and certain glass components from China, which peaked at 145%, have directly raised the cost of manufacturing tin cans and glass jars in the United States. Think about that for a second. Before a single vegetable or a single piece of canned meat goes into a tin, the tin itself costs more to produce. And that cost increase is running parallel to, not instead of, the food cost increases we've already talked about. When a food manufacturer's packaging costs spike by 20 to 30%, they have 3 levers to pull. They can raise the retail price. They can shrink the package size, what's called shrinkflation, while keeping the price identical. Or they can discontinue the product line entirely and focus their limited production capacity on higher margin items. Right now, all 3 of those levers are being pulled simultaneously across the industry. Here's what this means for home canners specifically, and it's important. The same upstream supply pressures hitting commercial producers are hitting the retail canning lid market. Canning lid availability has already been erratic over the past several years. Supply goes up, then down, then up again, and those dynamics have not. If you plan to do any canning this spring or summer, stock your lids now. Not in June, when you're looking at a pile of tomatoes. Now. This is a structural cost increase that doesn't get reversed when a tariff gets adjusted. Manufacturing input costs tend to be sticky on the way up. Item 5. Coffee. Your morning ritual is about to get more expensive. The United States imports approximately 80% of its roasted coffee, and every major supplier nation is currently tariff affected. Brazil, Colombia, Vietnam. Every single one of them is facing elevated import costs, and there is no meaningful domestic alternative. We simply don't have the growing conditions for large-scale coffee production in the continental US. But here's the double hit, because apparently a single problem just wasn't enough. The global coffee crop has been genuinely poor over the last 2 growing cycles, driven by unusual weather patterns affecting key growing regions. And Robusta bean prices. Robusta is the base bean in most commercial budget coffee and instant coffee, hit a 30-year high in early 2025. The USDA is projecting non-alcoholic beverages, which coffee largely drives, will increase another. If you are serious about your coffee habit, and I know most of you are, there's a simple storage strategy that most people don't use. Buy whole beans, not pre-ground. Whole beans retain flavor and shelf quality significantly longer than pre-ground coffee. Vacuum seal them in 1 to 2 pound portions and store in the freezer. Properly stored, whole beans in the freezer maintain quality for up to 2 years. That is a very manageable way to lock in today's prices for a long time. Now let me show you the one category that is quietly one of the most volatile on this entire list, and most people spend under $10 a year thinking about it. Item 6. Garlic and spices. The invisible inflation you're eating every day. China produces over 80% of the world's garlic. That is a staggering concentration of a single supply source for something that goes into virtually every cuisine on Earth. And at peak tariff rates, Chinese goods were facing 145% tariffs at the US border. Even where those rates have been partially adjusted, the instability in garlic supply has been real and visible. Reports of garlic bulbs selling out within hours in certain markets are not exaggerated. But garlic is just the beginning of the spice story. Vietnam and India are the primary suppliers of black pepper, turmeric, cumin, and dozens of other spices. Those nations are facing tariff rates between 30 and 46%. Black pepper, one of the most universally used spices in Western cooking, has seen significant price increases. Here's what I want you to think about. Spice inflation is invisible in a way that beef inflation isn't, because no single purchase is large enough to feel dramatic. You buy a jar of cumin for $3 instead of $2, and you shrug. But the cumulative annual spend on spices for an average household is meaningful, and more importantly, the flavor of your entire pantry depends on them. Shelf-stable protein stored without adequate spices is a morale problem waiting to happen. Buy whole peppercorns rather than pre-ground. They last years longer and you grind them fresh at home. Buy garlic powder in bulk alongside fresh garlic. Vacuum seal bulk spices in glass jars and store in cool, dark, dry conditions. A $10 investment in spice storage right now pays dividends for years. Item 7. Chocolate and cocoa. The sweet shortage nobody warned you about. I want to stop here for a moment because this next one is the item on this list that I genuinely did not expect to find when I went looking for it. And I think it's going to be the one that surprises most of you. West Africa produces approximately 60% of the world's cocoa supply. Ghana and Ivory Coast are the dominant producers, and in 2024, both nations experienced their worst cocoa harvest in over a decade. A combination of disease, unusual rainfall patterns, and aging tree stock created a supply collapse at the commodity level that was genuinely historic. Cocoa futures, the price that chocolate manufacturers pay for raw cocoa, briefly exceeded $10,000 per metric ton in early 2025. To put that in context, 18 months before that, the price was approximately $2,500 per metric ton. That is a 300% price increase at the commodity level in under 2 years. Major chocolate manufacturers publicly announced price increases and product reformulations. Some brands quietly reduced the actual cocoa content in their products while keeping the price and packaging identical, meaning you're paying more for less real chocolate. Here's the practical angle that most people miss entirely. Cocoa powder, not chocolate bars. Cocoa powder, stores for 2 to 3 years properly sealed, and is dramatically more cost-efficient than buying finished chocolate products. A pound of cocoa powder makes far more food than a pound of chocolate chips, and it's more versatile. Dark chocolate chips, vacuum sealed, also store reasonably well and are worth stocking if your household consumes them regularly. This is not a short-term commodity fluctuation. West African cocoa trees need years to recover from this kind of stress. The price pressure on chocolate and cocoa products is going to be with us through at least 2026 and likely well into 2027. I want you to stop for just 1 second. We are halfway through this list, and I need you to notice something. Every single item we've covered so far is being pressured from a completely different direction. Beef is a biological cattle cycle problem. Olive oil is a tariff and agricultural problem. Coffee is a weather and tariff problem. Cocoa is a disease and climate problem. Packaging is a manufacturing input problem. That's what makes fall 2025 genuinely different from any single cause disruption we've experienced before. This is convergence. And it is arriving all at once. Item 8. Fresh tomatoes and canned tomato products. The staple quietly becoming a luxury. Mexico supplies the majority of fresh tomatoes consumed in the United States, and fresh tomato prices have already risen 40 to 50% in some markets. A 17% tariff is now in place on Mexican produce, adding direct cost pressure to the most import-dependent produce category in the American diet. But here's why this matters specifically for fall, and it's something I want you to think carefully about. Fresh produce prices are always seasonal. In late summer and fall, as domestic growing seasons wind down across most of the country, we shift back to being primarily import-dependent for tomatoes, peppers, and many other produce staples. That seasonal shift happens every year. This year, it's going to land on top of existing tariff pressure and an already elevated price baseline. The double hit timing is basically the worst possible configuration. And here's something most people don't connect. Canned tomato products are directly priced off the fresh tomato market. When fresh tomato prices spike at the farm level, processed tomato products follow within 60 to 90 days. That means your crushed tomatoes, your diced tomatoes, your pasta sauce, your salsa, everything made with tomatoes as a primary ingredient is going to see meaningful price increases by October. Go buy commercially canned tomatoes now, not in August when everyone else figures this out. Now, crushed tomatoes, diced tomatoes, whole peeled tomatoes, tomato paste, your preferred salsa, rotel if that's your thing, stock what you actually use. If you are a home canner, source bulk Roma tomatoes through local farms this summer and process them yourself. The price per jar you produce in July is going to look very attractive compared to the retail price in November. Item 9. Butter and dairy. The quiet crisis in your refrigerator. This one is operating almost completely below the radar of most food prep discussions, and that's exactly why I want to put it on this list. Butter prices have been climbing steadily, and the pressures driving that climb are coming from multiple directions at the same time. Bird flu outbreaks over the past 2 years have been devastating to laying hen populations. That's primarily an egg story, which most people know, but the downstream effects on dairy economics and consumer substitution patterns have been real. Western drought is compressing dairy herd productivity in key production states. And European butter and premium dairy products, which have traditionally provided a quality alternative in the U.S. market, are now facing tariff pressure as EU import levies apply. Here's the thing most people don't realize about butter specifically. It has genuine long-term storage options that almost nobody takes advantage of. Salted butter, and the salt matters. It acts as a natural preservative, can be frozen in its original packaging, placed inside a sealed freezer bag for up to 12 months with no meaningful quality loss. So buying 3 to 4 pounds when you find it on sale and putting it directly in the freezer is a completely sound strategy. Even more useful for long-term storage. Key. Clarified butter, which is simply butter with the milk solids and water removed, is shelf-stable at room temperature for 12 months or more in a sealed jar. You can make ghee at home from bulk butter in about 30 minutes. It stores without refrigeration, it has a higher smoke point than regular butter, and it is one of the most underrated shelf-stable fats available for a prepared pantry. Item 10. Rice. The staple everyone assumes is completely safe. Ask most people what food item they're least worried about, and rice comes up almost every time. It's cheap. It's widely available. It feels permanent. And that assumption is worth examining carefully right now. India is the world's largest rice exporter, accounting for roughly 40% of global rice trade volume. Beginning in 2023, India implemented a series of rice export bans and restrictions, triggered by domestic food security concerns following poor monsoon yields. Those restrictions have not been fully lifted as of 2025, and they continue to compress global rice supply and trade dynamics. Vietnam, the world's second-largest rice exporter, now faces U.S. tariffs that directly affect import economics for one of the most consumed staple grains on Earth. What you're seeing in the U.S. right now, if you're paying attention, is not a shortage of generic long-grain white rice. That's still available. What's narrowing is variety. Jasmine rice, basmati rice, sushi rice. Specialty regional varieties that many households depend on for cultural and culinary reasons are showing the sharpest price increases in the range of 20 to 35% in some markets, and occasional genuine availability gaps in certain retailers. The storage case for rice is one of the strongest of any pantry staple. White rice, and it has to be white rice, not brown, stored in sealed food-grade containers with oxygen absorbers, can last 25 to 30 years with essentially no quality degradation. Buy in 25 to 50-pound bags from Asian grocery stores or wholesale clubs for significantly better per-pound pricing. Transfer to 5-gallon food-grade buckets with Gamma-Seal lids and oxygen absorbers. This is literally a once-in-a-generation storage investment. We are into the final 5 items on this list. And I want to tell you honestly, these last ones are the ones that almost nobody in this space is covering yet. Stay with me. Item 11. Cooking oils. The entire category is under pressure. We talked about olive oil already. But the problem isn't just olive oil, it's the entire cooking oil category, and each oil is being pressured from a completely different supply chain direction. Sunflower oil. Ukraine is one of the world's top sunflower oil producers, and the ongoing conflict has dramatically disrupted Ukrainian agricultural exports since 2022. Global sunflower oil prices remain significantly elevated as a direct consequence. Canola oil, a staple in North American kitchens, faces supply pressure related to Canada trade tensions and fluctuating agricultural output. Palm oil from Malaysia and Indonesia, which underlies a significant portion of processed food manufacturing in addition to direct cooking use, is navigating both tariff complexity and sustainability-driven import restrictions in various markets. Here's why this matters beyond just the price of a bottle. Cooking oil is one of the highest calorie per dollar foods you can store, and it plays a role in food security that is easy to underestimate. Many preserved foods, beans, grains, canned proteins, need cooking fat to be properly prepared into satisfying meals. A pantry without adequate cooking oil is a pantry that's going to face real limitations. The practical solution: avocado oil has the longest shelf life of common cooking oils, up to 2 years unopened, and stores well even after opening. Coconut oil is shelf-stable for 2+ years and serves as both a cooking fat and a versatile food resource. Buy one oil you cook with daily, and stock a secondary option as a backup. Variety in your oil pantry costs very little and pays meaningful dividends. Item 12. Canned soups and processed meals. The convenience category is quietly shrinking. This one operates through a mechanism that I want to make sure you understand, because it explains something confusing you may have noticed in stores. Major soup and canned meal manufacturers have been conducting what the industry calls SKU rationalization, which is a polite corporate term for discontinuing products. This has been accelerating since 2022, and the best estimates from industry analysts suggest that major brands have quietly reduced their product variety. Campbell's, Progresso, and comparable brands have discussed this publicly in earnings calls, framing it as a strategic focus on core products and higher-margin items. Here's the mechanism you need to understand. When a product gets discontinued, the retailer doesn't leave a gap on the shelf. They adjust the planogram, the shelf layout, and spread the remaining products out to fill the space. The shelf looks full. Nothing looks wrong. But you reach for your favorite variety and it's not there, and you assume it's temporarily out of stock. Sometimes it is. Often it isn't. It's been permanently discontinued, and you won't know that for weeks. This is the ghost shelf phenomenon, and it's going to be significantly more visible by fall as the combination of packaging cost increases and ingredient cost increases. Build at least a 3-month supply of the canned soups and prepared meals your household actually relies on. Not random cans, the specific ones you eat. Canned soup store for 2 to 3 years. This is a category where brand and variety loyalty genuinely matters from a preparedness standpoint. Item 13. Frozen vegetables. The healthy option nobody is stocking. Frozen vegetables feel immune to supply disruption in a way that fresh produce obviously doesn't. They're preserved, they're industrial, they feel like they'll always be there. That assumption deserves a closer look. A significant portion of U.S. frozen vegetable supply originates from Mexico, Guatemala, and China, all of which are facing tariff pressure in the current environment. Beyond the ingredient supply, frozen food manufacturing is energy-intensive, cold chain dependent, and relies heavily on processing equipment with significant Chinese manufactured components that are themselves subject to tariff pressure. The cost inputs for frozen vegetable production are being squeezed from multiple angles simultaneously. Here is something that genuinely surprises most people. Frozen vegetables are nutritionally nearly equivalent to fresh, sometimes superior, because they're flash frozen within hours of harvest at peak ripeness, while fresh vegetables may have spent days in transit losing nutritional density. Frozen spinach, frozen broccoli, frozen green beans. These are legitimate, high-quality nutritional options that happen to store for 12 to 18 months in a standard freezer. If you have access to a chest freezer, or if you're considering getting one, and they're worth every dollar, a well-stocked deep freeze full of frozen vegetables. It requires no special skills, no canning equipment, no oxygen absorbers. You buy it on sale, you put it in the freezer, and it's there when you need it. We're down to 2 more items. Stay with me, because the second to last one is one I genuinely debated including. Item 14. Pet food. The supply chain nobody is prepping for. If you have pets, your preparedness plan has a gap in it if it doesn't include your animal's food. I say this gently but directly, because I see it constantly. Households with 3 months of human food, a meaningful portion of pet food protein, particularly fish-based formulas and certain meat meal ingredients, comes from South American and Asian suppliers now navigating tariff pressure. Ingredient costs for commercial pet food production have risen significantly, estimates in the range of 20 to 30% since 2022. We have already experienced pet food shortages in this country. During the supply chain disruptions of 2021 and 2022, specific categories, particularly prescription and specialty dietary formulas, that vulnerability has not been structurally resolved. The practical ask here is simple. Build a 3-month supply of your pet's regular food. Buy the brand and formula your animal is already eating. Switching foods suddenly is not recommended for pets under stress, and an emergency is exactly the wrong time to introduce dietary change. If your pet has prescription dietary needs, prioritize this even ahead of building human food supply, because a sick animal creates significant additional household burden at the worst possible time. Rotate properly, first in, first out. Most commercial pet food has a shelf life of 12 to 18 months. This is not a complicated prep. It's just one that most people overlook entirely. Item 15. The collapse of affordable protein variety. And we've arrived at number 15. This one is a little different. It's not a single item disappearing from the shelf. It's a structural shift in what's available to most households at a price they can actually afford, and I think it's the most important thing on this entire list for the long term. Think about where protein affordability has gone in the last 24 months. Beef is over $6.7 a pound and heading higher. Eggs still elevated after bird flu devastation. Pork projected up 4% this year. Poultry up 0.7%. Even canned tuna, one of the most historically affordable proteins, is getting more expensive as we've covered. The combined effect of these individual increases on a household's monthly food budget is estimated at 8 to 15% depending on your protein consumption patterns. Calculated against USDA, what's happening is what I'd call protein compression. The affordable variety of protein options is narrowing. Households are being pushed toward a smaller and smaller set of options, and that concentrated demand is itself driving up the prices of the lower-cost proteins that were supposed to be the fallback. Canned tuna, dried beans, lentils. These are all seeing demand spikes precisely because everyone else is trying to substitute down from beef. The solution to this is deliberate protein diversification. Not just substituting down, strategically mapping 5 or more different protein sources into your regular meal planning so that no single supply disruption eliminates a critical part of your nutrition. Ground beef supplemented with ground pork. Canned tuna alongside home canned chicken. Dried lentils and black beans as a regular part of the rotation, not just an emergency backup. Variety in your protein pantry is the single most powerful hedge against what's coming in the fall protein market. Alright, now you know what's coming. Let's talk about what you actually do about it, and I want to be specific, not general. Step 1. Audit your current situation. I need you to be completely honest with yourself here. Not what you wish you had. What you actually have. Open the pantry, open the freezer, open every cabinet, and write down what's there and how much. Do not skip this step. You cannot build an effective plan without knowing your starting point. Step 2. Prioritize the items under the most pressure. From what we've covered today, your immediate focus should be olive oil, canned tuna, canned tomatoes, coffee, garlic and key spices, rice and your primary cooking oil. These are the categories where the window to buy at reasonable prices is closing in real time. You don't need to overhaul your entire pantry at once. Target one category per week. Step 3. Build your protein strategy. Given that beef is going to be expensive through at least 2027 and probably longer, you need a protein plan. For home canners, the spring is your window. 10-pound chubs of ground beef and pork on sale. Pressure can for 2 to 3 years of shelf-stable protein at today's price. For everyone, start building a rotation that includes at least 4 to 5 different protein sources, so you're not dependent on any single one. Step 4. Make your canning calendar right now. Don't wait until you're staring at a pile of ripe tomatoes in August, wondering how you're going to get it all done. Here's how the year maps out. May and June, strawberries, chicken, ground beef, beans. These are available and affordable right now. July and early August, tomatoes, peppers, salsa, green beans, corn. This is your heavy canning season, your most important window. Late August through September, applesauce, apple butter, soups, stews. If you follow that calendar, by October you will have a pantry that is genuinely insulated from the worst of what fall is going to bring. Step 5. Don't forget your pets. Build 3 months of your animal's regular food. First in, first out rotation. Do it now. Here is what I want you to hold on to as you close this video and go do whatever comes next. You are watching this video. That already puts you in a fundamentally different category from most households. About 90% of people walking into a grocery store this fall will be caught completely off guard by what they find. They'll feel the price pressure, and they won't understand why. They'll reach for something they've always bought and discover it's not there, and they won't know what happened. You know what's happening. And more importantly, you have a window, right now, these next 4 to 5 months, to build genuine insulation against it. Not because the world is ending. Not because shelves are going to be bare. Because prices are going up, variety is going down, and a little preparation right now is worth a lot of relief later. Don't go buy 10 years of food tonight. That is not what I'm asking you to do, and it's not effective even if you tried. Build deliberately. 1 step at a time. 1 category at a time. 1 week at a time. That is how a real pantry gets built, and that is what actually protects your family. Drop number 1 in the comments if you're already stocking at least one of the items from today's list. I genuinely read every comment, and those conversations are how I figure out what to cover next. Your feedback on the tomato situation is exactly what pushed me to do the deep dive that ended up in this video. Next week, I'm going to walk you through the exact $50 a week pantry building strategy I would use if I were starting completely from scratch today. 0 inventory. $50 every week. Specific items, specific stores, specific rotation logic. You don't want to miss that one. Until then, be safe, keep stacking, and take care of you and yours.